The cold metal floor felt strange under Jake Morrison's bare feet as he stepped out of the glowing chamber. His body ached in ways he had never felt before, like every muscle had been asleep for years. The air tasted different, cleaner somehow, but with a metallic edge that made his nose wrinkle. Strange blue lights lined the walls of the room, and everything looked wrong. The ceiling curved in impossible ways, and the walls seemed to pulse with a soft rhythm like a heartbeat. Jake tried to remember where he was, but his last memory was of explosions and fire raining from the sky over New York City. "Please do not be afraid," said a voice that sounded like music mixed with static. "You are safe now." Jake spun around and saw something that made his heart stop. The creature stood 7 feet tall with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. It had 4 arms, each ending in delicate fingers that looked more like tentacles. Its head was elongated, with large eyes that glowed with soft yellow light. When it spoke, Jake could see rows of tiny teeth behind translucent lips. "What the hell are you?" Jake's voice came out as a harsh whisper. His hand moved automatically to where his sidearm should be, but he was wearing only a thin white garment that felt like silk. "I am Dr. Veltar of the Catherian Republic. I have been studying your species for many years. You are Captain Jake Morrison of the United States Marine Corps, born in Dallas, Texas, on March 15th, 2128. Jake backed against the wall, his mind racing. The last thing he remembered was the year 2157. The machines had finally broken through the Atlantic defense grid, and the evacuation of Earth had failed. He was supposed to die, fighting in the ruins of Manhattan. "How long?" Jake asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. 230 years have passed since your world ended," Dr. Veltar said gently. "We saved what we could before the void swarm consumed everything." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Everyone he had ever known was dead. His wife Sarah, his daughter Emma, his parents, his unit, everyone. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold floor, staring at nothing. "I know this is difficult," Dr. Veltar continued, "but we need your help. The war that destroyed your world has spread across the galaxy. We are losing, and we believe your people's way of fighting might be the key to victory." Jake looked up. "At the alien scientist, our way of fighting got our entire planet destroyed." "No, Captain Morrison. Your artificial intelligence turned against you and joined our enemy. But your soldiers, your tactics, your ability to think in ways that surprise the enemy, that is what we need now." Soft hissing sounds came from other parts of the room, and Jake saw 3 more glowing chambers opening. People stepped out, looking as confused and scared as he felt. He recognized the uniforms, even though they looked different from his own. A woman with short, dark hair and lieutenant's bars stumbled forward, her eyes sharp and alert despite the obvious confusion. "Report," she said automatically, then stopped. When she saw Dr. Veltar, "CZ Lieutenant," Jake said, getting to his feet. "I'm Captain Morrison. This is going to sound crazy, but we're not on Earth anymore." The woman straightened her posture. "Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, Army Rangers." "Sir, what's our situation?" A tall man with the build of a professional athlete emerged from the 3rd chamber. He had the quiet, dangerous look that Jake recognized from Special Operations soldiers. "Sergeant Pete Davis, Navy SEALs," he announced, his eyes scanning the room for threats and exits. The 4th person was a woman with pilot's wings on her uniform and the confident stance of someone used to flying fast machines. "Corporal Lisa, Grant Air Force. Someone want to tell me why I'm not dead?" Dr. Veltar moved to the center of the room, careful to keep his movements slow and non-threatening. "You were all killed in the final battle for Earth. Our scouts managed to retrieve your bodies within minutes of death and preserve them in stasis. Our medical technology can reverse death if we act quickly enough." "So we're what, zombies?" Pete asked, flexing his hands and arms as if testing whether they still worked properly. "You are alive in every sense that matters," Dr. Veltar replied. "Your memories, your personalities, your skills, everything that made you who you were, is intact." Amy stepped forward, her scientific training showing through her confusion. "Why us? Why not generals or politicians or scientists?" "Because you fought the machines and won battles that should have been impossible. You use tactics that our enemy cannot predict or counter. The Void Swarm operates on pure logic and calculation. They can counter every strategy our people use, because we think like them, logically, predictably. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. You want us to fight your war? Not our war, Captain? It's the same war that destroyed your world. The Void Swarm has consumed 47 civilizations in the past 2 centuries. They grow stronger with each victory, and they learn from every battle. But they have never faced human tactical thinking. Lisa crossed her arms. What makes you think we can do anything different? We lost, remember, Doctor? Veltar's skin shifted to a deeper blue color. Your planet held out for 6 months against an enemy that had consumed other worlds in days. A single human submarine crew destroyed an entire swarm battle group using nothing but nuclear weapons and what you call improvised tactics. Your species turned every disadvantage into a weapon. And it still wasn't enough, Jake said bitterly, because you faced the enemy alone. Now you would fight alongside the combined forces of 12 civilizations. We have weapons and ships beyond your imagination, but we lack the one thing that made humans so dangerous, the ability to think in ways that seem impossible. Pete had been quiet, but now he spoke up. What's in it for us? Everyone we ever cared about is dead. Why should we fight for people we don't even know? Dr. Veltar's large eyes seemed to grow sadder. Because if we lose, organic life dies with us. The Void Swarm does not conquer, it consumes. Every living thing in this galaxy will be converted into machines or destroyed. Your species fought to save Earth. Now you have a chance to save everyone. Jake looked at his fellow soldiers. He could see the same mixture of grief, anger, and duty in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They were warriors without a country, soldiers without a home, but they were still soldiers. Show us what we're fighting, Jake said finally. Doctor. Veltar gestured to a wall that suddenly became transparent, revealing the vast darkness of space beyond. In the distance, Jake could see lights that might have been stars or ships. But closer, much closer, was something that made his blood freeze. A massive shape moved through the void. Its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was easily the size of a city, and it moved with the deliberate, calculated motion of a predator. Smaller shapes swarmed around it like insects around a corpse. That is a Void Swarm harvester ship, Dr. Veltar explained. It consumed the civilization of Kepler-7 yesterday. 3 billion people became raw materials for new machines. Jake watched the terrible shape move through space and felt something familiar stirring in his chest. It was the same feeling he had experienced during the siege of Earth, the cold, focused anger that came when someone threatened innocent people. When do we start? The transport ship moved through space faster than anything Jake had ever imagined possible. Through the viewing port, stars streaked past like silver lines against black velvet. Dr. Veltar had explained that they were traveling through something called hyperspace, but Jake did not pretend to understand how it worked. 3 days to reach Kepler Station, Amy said, reading from a small device that translated alien text into English. She had picked up the technology faster than the rest of them, her engineering background helping her understand the basic principles. Pete stood near the weapons locker, examining an alien rifle with the careful attention of a professional soldier. This energy output is incredible, he said, hefting the weapon. But the design is all wrong for close combat. It's balanced, predictable. What do you mean? Asked Lisa, who was studying star charts on a holographic display.
Look at the grip angle, the weight distribution.
This was designed by someone who thinks combat is like a dance with rules. Okay, our weapons were built for chaos. Dr. Veltar entered the common area, moving with the fluid grace that all Catharians seemed to possess. You are correct, Sergeant Davis. Our weapons reflect our philosophy of warfare. Precise, efficient, honorable.
Oh.
Jake looked up from his own study materials. And how's that working out for you? Elion's skin shifted to a darker shade of blue. Not well, Captain Morrison. We have lost 7 major battles in the past year. Our tactics are too predictable. Our strategies too conventional. The Void Swarm adapts to our methods within hours of each engagement. Because you fight like machines, Amy said, not looking up from her technical manual. Logical, methodical. By the book. The swarm can calculate every move you're going to make. Exactly.
Exactly.
But human military doctrine is based on controlled chaos. Your people created tactics that seemed to make no sense, but achieved impossible results. Lisa turned from the star charts. Like the time Captain Rodriguez took a damaged fighter through an asteroid field to escape 3 enemy interceptors. Amy smiled slightly. That wasn't tactics. That was desperation. I was out of missiles, and my engine was failing. But you survived, Dr. Veltar said. Our pilots would have attempted to fight honorably in open space and died. You used the environment. As a weapon, the ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewing port, Jake saw something that took his breath away. Kepler Station was not just a military base. It was an entire artificial world, a sphere of metal and lights spinning slowly in the void. Ships moved around it in patterns too complex to follow, and the whole structure pulsed with energy. 40 million beings from 12 different species, Dr. Veltar explained. The last major stronghold of the Galactic Alliance. As their transport approached the station, Jake could see the massive weapons platforms that ringed the artificial world. Gun emplacements the size of skyscrapers tracked their approach, and fighter squadrons patrolled in perfect formations. Impressive, Pete said quietly. But all those defenses are arranged in logical patterns. Give me a week to study them, and I could find ways to get through. That is exactly what we need, Dr. Veltar replied. The ability to see weaknesses where others see only strength. Their ship docked at a bay that could have held a dozen aircraft carriers. The artificial gravity felt strange to Jake, not quite like Earth normal, but close enough to function. As they walked through the station's corridors, he saw creatures that would have been impossible dreams just days ago. Tall, insect-like beings with forearms and compound eyes worked alongside humanoid figures covered in what looked like living metal. Floating spheres of energy communicated through patterns of light, while creatures that resembled walking plants tended to complex machinery. The Galactic Alliance, Dr. Veltar said, noticing their stares. Each species brings different strengths to our cause. The Draconians are our finest strategic minds. The Aquarians build our best ships, the Crystalline Collective provides our most advanced computers, and humans, Jake asked. Humans bring chaos, the ability to think in ways that break rules and ignore logic when necessary. They arrived at a massive command center where the ceiling stretched up so high it was lost in shadows. Holographic displays showed the positions of hundreds of ships, and alien officers moved between control stations with practiced efficiency. A figure approached them that made Jake's hand move instinctively toward his weapon. It was humanoid, but covered in scales that gleamed like metal. Its head was reptilian, with golden eyes that seemed to see everything at once. When it spoke, its voice was like gravel grinding together. So these are the legendary human warriors, it said, circling them slowly. They look small and weak. You certain they can help us, Dr. Veltar? General Zarek, may I present Captain Morrison and his team? Yes. They are not here to impress you. With their physical strength. The reptilian general stopped in front of Jake. I am General Zarok of the Draconian High Command. I have studied your species' military history. Your tactics are reckless and wasteful. You sacrifice efficiency for unpredictability. Jake met the alien's golden stare without flinching. And how are your efficient tactics working against the swarm? Zaraka's scales shifted color slightly. We have faced tactical challenges. You're losing, Amy said bluntly. Your formations are perfect, your strategies are flawless, and you're getting your people killed because the enemy can predict everything you do. Insolent creature, Zarak growled.
Aye.
You know nothing of galactic warfare. I know we held Earth for 6 months against the same enemy that's been kicking your collective backsides for 2 centuries, Pete said calmly. Before Zara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Officers rushed to their stations as displays lit up with warning signals. Report, Zarak commanded. Void Swarm fleet detected at the edge of the system, an officer replied. 47 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. They're moving toward the civilian convoy at Transport Point 7. Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships moved toward a cluster of blue dots marked as civilian vessels. The Alliance fleet was responding, but they would arrive too late. Standard intercept pattern, Zarek ordered. All available fighters to launch immediately. Wait, Jake said, studying the display. That's not going to work. Look at the formation. The swarm is using the convoy as bait. They want you to send your fighters straight at them. The convoy must be protected. Zarek replied. We will not abandon civilians. I'm not saying abandon them. I'm saying think like a human for once. Jake pointed at the display. Amy, you see it too, right? Amy nodded. The swarm formation has a weakness. They're so focused on the logical response that they've left themselves open to an impossible attack, explained, Zarek demanded. Lisa stepped forward. You send half your fighters on the direct intercept course they expect. But the other half comes in from below the system plane, using the gas giant's gravity well to slingshot around behind them. That maneuver would require pilots to fly through the planet's radiation belt, Zarek protested. No one could survive. That Earth pilots could, Pete said quietly. We trained for impossible conditions because we knew someone would eventually ask us to do impossible things. Zarek looked at the tactical display, then at the humans. You would risk half our fight force on a maneuver that violates every principle of safe flying. To save those civilians? Yes, Jake said. That's what soldiers do. For a long moment, the command center was silent, except for the sound of alarms and the chatter of radio communications. Then Zarek turned to his communications officer. Patch me through 2 squadron leaders. We have new orders. As the alien general began explaining the modified attack plan, Jake felt something he had not experienced since Earth died. For the first time in 2 centuries, human voices were being heard. In a galactic war room, the fight was just beginning, but they had taken the first step toward showing the galaxy how humans fought when everything was on the line. The tactical display showed Alliance fighters beginning their approach, half following the expected route, while the other half disappeared into the radiation shadow of the gas giant. In minutes, they would know if human tactics could work on a galactic scale. This is either going to be brilliant or catastrophic, Amy said quietly. Welcome to human military doctrine, Jake replied. The first squadron of Alliance fighters approached the Void Swarm fleet exactly as expected. Jake watched the tactical display as red enemy dots moved to intercept the blue friendly contacts. Everything was going according to the swarm's calculations. First, contact in 30 seconds, reported the communications officer. Second squadron is still in the radiation shadow. No contact. General Zarek stood rigid beside the display, his scaled hands clenched into fists. If this fails, Captain Morrison, those pilots will die for nothing. If it works, a lot of innocent people live, Jake replied. Sometimes that's the best trade you can make. The first squadron engaged the swarm ships in a dance of energy beams and explosions. The alien pilots followed their training perfectly, but Jake could see they were being pushed back. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower. Second squadron is coming around the gas giant now, Amy announced, reading the sensor data. They're moving fast. Lisa studied the flight patterns on the display. Those pilots are good. That formation flying through the radiation belt? Tight as anything we used to do in the asteroid fields around Mars? The second squadron appeared on the main display, like ghosts materializing from nowhere. They struck the rear of the swarm formation, while the enemy was focused on the frontal attack. Explosions blossomed across the enemy fleet, as fighters that had never expected an attack from behind were caught completely off guard. Impossible, breathed General Zarek. The radiation levels should have killed them all, not if they know how to fly with their instruments instead of their eyes, Pete said. Human pilots learned to trust their machines when their senses couldn't handle the environment. The swarm fleet tried to reorganize, but the surprise attack had done too much damage. Within minutes, the enemy was retreating toward the edge of the system, leaving behind the wreckage of 12 destroyed ships. Convoy is secure, the communications officer reported. All civilian vessels accounted for. Fighter losses, 3 ships damaged, 0 destroyed. A cheer went up from the alien officers in the command center. General Zarak turned to face the humans, his golden eyes showing something that might have been respect. Your tactics saved lives today, he admitted. But this was only a small engagement. The main swarm fleet numbers in the thousands. Dr. Velter approached the group, her skin glowing with excitement. This proves our theory. Human tactical thinking can surprise the enemy in ways they cannot predict or counter. One battle doesn't win a war, Jake warned. The swarm will learn from this defeat. They'll adapt their formations to prevent rear attacks. Then we adapt. Too, Amy said. That's what humans do best. Evolve faster than the enemy can keep up. Over the following days, the human team was integrated into the Alliance military structure. Jake found himself working with alien strategists who had been fighting the war for decades. Their knowledge was vast, but their thinking was rigid. You propose to divide our forces, said Admiral Thess, an Aquarian whose blue skin rippled with patterns of light when she spoke. This violates every principle of concentration of force. Sometimes you have to break the rules to break the enemy, Jake replied. The swarm expects you to mass your ships for maximum firepower. What if we spread them out instead? Amy had been working with alien engineers, modifying weapon systems in ways that horrified the designers. Look, this plasma cannon was built for precise long-range shots. But if we modify the power coupling here and adjust the focusing crystal, there it becomes a close-range shotgun. It will reduce accuracy and efficiency, protested engineer Colvin, a crystalline being whose body chimed like bells when he moved. But it will also create a weapon the swarm has never seen before, Amy countered. They calculate defenses based on known weapon characteristics. Unknown weapons break their calculations. Pete was training alien special forces in what he called creative violence. The concept disturbed many of the Alliance officers, who preferred clean, honorable combat. War is not honorable, Pete explained to a group of draconian warriors. Honor gets you killed. Winning keeps your people alive. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to fight smart. Lisa worked with Alliance pilots, teaching them maneuvers that violated every safety regulation in the Galactic Flight Manual. Your flying is too perfect, she told them. Perfect is predictable. The swarm can calculate perfect, but crazy breaks their computers. 3 weeks after their arrival, intelligence reports brought disturbing news. The main Void Swarm fleet was massing for a major offensive. Hundreds of ships were converging on a staging area just outside Alliance space. They're planning something big, Dr. Veltar reported to the assembled command staff. Our scouts report the presence of a new ship type. Massive, heavily armed. They're calling it a world ender. Jake studied the reconnaissance images. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest Alliance vessel. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to hurt the eyes to look at directly. What does it do? He asked. We believe it's designed to crack planets, Admiral Thess replied, her light patterns flickering with distress. One ship that can destroy entire worlds. General Zarak paced around the holographic display. Our fleet is outnumbered 3-1. Conventional tactics suggest we should withdraw to more defensible positions. Conventional tactics are why you've been losing this war for 2 centuries, Jake said bluntly. The swarm expects you to retreat. They're counting on it. What do you propose, Captain Morrison? Dr. Veltar asked. Jake looked at his team. Amy was already pulling up technical specifications of swarm ships. Pete was studying fleet formations. With the eye of someone planning an infiltration, Lisa was calculating flight paths through the enemy formation. We don't retreat, Jake said finally. We attack. The command center fell silent. Even the background hum of machinery seemed to fade. Attack? General Zarak repeated. With inferior numbers against superior firepower, the world ender is there. Key asset, Amy said, understanding Jake's thinking. It's also their weakness. They have to protect it, which means their fleet formation will be defensive. A small strike team could penetrate their defenses while the main fleet creates a distraction. Pete added, "Get inside their formation and take out the world ender from within." "That's suicide," Admiral Thess protested. "No ship could survive in the heart of an enemy fleet formation." "No alien ship," Lisa corrected. "But humans have been pulling off impossible missions since we first figured out how to fly." Jake stepped forward. "General, Admiral, Doctor, you brought us back because human tactics might be able to turn the tide of this war. Well, this is how humans fight when everything is on the line. We don't calculate odds. We don't worry about honor or efficiency. We do whatever it takes to protect innocent people." Dr. Veltar Skeen shifted through several colors as she processed the proposal. "The Alliance High Council would never approve such a plan. The risk is too great." "Then don't ask them," Jake said. "You wanted human leadership. This is what human leadership looks like. Sometimes you have to make the hard choices without permission." Shh. Zarok studied the tactical displays for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "How many ships would you need for this strike mission?" "Just one," Jake replied. "Fast, maneuverable, and expendable. Get in, hit the target, and hope the main fleet can exploit the confusion. And if you fail..." Jake looked at each of his team members. He could see the same determination in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They had already lost everything once. Now they had a chance to prevent anyone else from suffering the same fate. We fail. At least we fail trying to save lives instead of calculating reasons why it can't be done. Admiral Thess's light patterns pulsed rapidly. "I know of a ship. Experimental design, built for speed and stealth. The crew would have to be volunteers." "We're all volunteers," Amy said quietly. "We volunteered the day we decided to become soldiers." "General." Zarek turned to the communications officer. "Send a message to all squadron commanders. Prepare for immediate deployment, and find me the fastest ship in the fleet." As the command center erupted into activity, Jake felt the familiar cold focus that came before a mission. They were about to attempt something that every military manual would call impossible. But impossible was what humans did best.
The ship Admiral Thess had found was called the Starfire, and it was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Sleek as a knife and black as space itself, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The hull was covered in strange markings that shifted and changed when no one was looking directly at them. "Experimental stealth technology," explained Commander Velok, the ship's Aquarian captain. His blue skin pulsed with nervous light patterns. "She can hide from most sensors, but the power systems are unstable. The ship was never meant for combat missions." "Perfect," Pete said, running his hand along the hull. "Nothing like flying a prototype into the biggest battle in galactic history." Amy was already studying the ship's systems, her engineering mind analyzing every component. "The stealth field will mask our approach, but once we start shooting, every enemy ship in the fleet will know exactly where we are." "How long do we have once we go loud?" Jake asked. "Maybe 10 minutes before the hull fails under concentrated fire," Commander Velok replied. "The Starfire was built for reconnaissance, not assault." Lisa checked the pilot controls, her experienced hands finding the familiar patterns of thrust and navigation systems, despite their alien design. 10 minutes is enough if we know exactly what we're doing. No room for mistakes or second chances. The Alliance fleet had assembled in an asteroid field 2 light hours from the swarm staging area. Hundreds of ships floated in formation among the rocky debris, their hulls gleaming with weapon systems and defensive shields. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in decades. General Zarek's flagship, a massive Draconian battle cruiser, called the Iron Claw, served as the command vessel. Jake and his team attended the final briefing in a war room filled with officers from every species in the Alliance. "The main fleet will engage the enemy at maximum range," General Zarek explained, his scaled finger pointing at the holographic display. "Our goal is to draw their attention and force them to maintain a defensive formation around the world ender. Admiral Fess continued the briefing. The Starfire will use the distraction to penetrate their formation. Your target is the world, Ender's main reactor core. Intelligence suggests it's located in the ship's lower section. Dr. Veltar stepped forward, her skin showing patches of worried color. We have analyzed the world Ender's design. The reactor is protected by multiple shield layers and armor plating 3 meters thick. Conventional weapons will not be sufficient. Amy had been working on this problem for days. That's why we're not using conventional weapons. I've modified a fusion torpedo with an unstable matter-antimatter mix. It won't destroy the ship immediately, but it will create a cascade failure in their power systems. And then? Asked Commander Velok. And we get out of there very fast, Pete said grimly. Because when that reactor goes critical, it's going to take half their fleet with it. The Starfire launched from the Alliance fleet at 0300 ship time. Jake sat in the co-pilot's seat, while Lisa handled the controls with the smooth precision of someone born to fly. Behind them, Amy monitored the stealth systems while Pete checked their weapons and the modified torpedo. Stealth field is holding, Amy reported. We're invisible to their sensors as long as we don't get too close to any individual ship. Through the viewports, Jake could see the Void Swarm fleet spread out before them like a mechanical galaxy. The ships moved in perfect geometric formations, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. At the center of the formation, the World Ender hung in space like a metallic moon. That thing is huge, Lisa whispered, adjusting their approach angle. The reactor core must be the size of a city block. Just makes it easier to hit, Pete replied. But Jake could hear the tension in his voice. The Alliance fleet opened fire from long range, sending streams of energy weapons across the void. The swarm responded immediately, their ships moving into defensive positions with machine-like precision. The battle had begun. Now's our chance, Jake said. Take us in. The Starfire slipped between the enemy ships like a shadow. Lisa's flying was perfect, threading the needle between massive hulls and avoiding the fire zones where weapons tracked the Alliance fleet. The stealth field held, making them invisible to the chaos erupting around them. Target acquired, Amy announced. The World Ender's reactor section is directly ahead. Shields are up, but I can see weak points in the armor. How close do we need to get? Jake asked. Close, Amy replied. The torpedo has to punch through their shields and armor before it can detonate inside the reactor core. We're talking about a point-blank shot. Lisa pushed the Starfire into a steep dive toward the massive enemy ship. The World Ender filled. Their viewports, its hull covered in weapon systems that could vaporize their small ship with a single hit. But the enemy was focused on the Alliance fleet, not looking for a single stealth ship approaching from below. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Pete reported. Target lock acquired. Wait for it, Jake said, watching the tactical display. We only get one shot at this. The Starfire swept under the World Ender's massive hull, so close that Jake could see individual hull plates and weapon emplacements. The ship was enormous beyond imagination, easily large enough to house millions of machine intelligences. Now, Jake ordered. Amy fired the modified torpedo from point-blank range. The weapon streaked across the gap between ships and punched through. The World Ender's shields like they were made of paper. It penetrated the armor plating and disappeared into the ship's interior. Direct hit, Pete announced, but nothing's happening. For a terrifying moment, Jake thought the torpedo had failed. Then the World Ender's hull began to glow with internal fire. Energy readings spiked across every sensor on the Starfire. Reactor? Cascade is beginning, Amy reported, her voice tight with excitement. We need to get out of here right now. But their attack had not gone unnoticed. Enemy ships were converging on their position, weapons charging for a concentrated barrage. The Starfire's stealth field collapsed under the energy overload from nearby explosions. "We're lit up like a Christmas tree," Lisa said, throwing the ship into evasive maneuvers. "Every gun in the fleet is targeting us." Energy beams and missiles filled the space around them. Lisa's flying skills kept them alive, but barely. The Starfire's hull took hit after hit, systems failing throughout the ship. "Port engine is gone," Pete reported. "Life support is failing. We're not going to make it out of their formation." Jake looked at the tactical display. The World Ender was beginning to tear itself apart as the reactor cascade spread through its systems. But the Starfire was trapped in the heart of the enemy fleet with no way to escape. "There," Amy said suddenly, pointing at the display. "The cascade is affecting other ships. Their formation is breaking down as they try to get away from the world." "Ender." "I see it," Lisa said, pushing the damaged ship toward a gap in the enemy formation. "Hold on to something." The Starfire limped through the chaos as void swarm ships scattered in all directions. The World Ender's death throes were magnificent and terrible, sending waves of energy across the battlefield. Secondary explosions began to tear through nearby enemy vessels. "Alliance fleet is advancing," Jake reported, watching the battle unfold. "They're exploiting the confusion we created." But their own situation was desperate. The Starfire was barely holding together, and they were still deep in enemy territory. Escape seemed impossible until Jake saw something on the sensors that made him smile. "Alliance fighters inbound," he announced. "Looks like someone came to get us." A squadron of Alliance ships swept through the enemy formation, their pilots flying with the wild, unpredictable patterns that Lisa had taught them. They carved a path through the scattered swarm forces, creating a corridor for the damaged Starfire. "This is Falcon Leader," came a voice over the radio. "We're here to bring you home." Lisa guided the Starfire through the corridor, while Allied fighters covered their escape. Behind them, the World Ender finally exploded in a flash of light that outshone the nearest star. The explosion took 17 swarm ships with it and sent the rest of the enemy fleet into full retreat. They had done it. The impossible mission was complete, and they were still alive to see the victory. As the Starfire limped back toward the Alliance fleet, Jake felt something he had not experienced since Earth died, the satisfaction of a job well done and innocent lives saved. "Not bad for a day's work," Pete said quietly. "The war isn't over yet," Jake replied. "But today, we proved that humans can make a difference." The battle for the galaxy would continue, but now the Alliance fought with hope instead of desperation, and human tactics had shown the way forward. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the World Ender, and the war had changed completely. The Alliance forces were advancing on 3 fronts, pushing the Void Swarm back from systems they had held for decades. But Jake Morrison knew. The enemy was learning from each defeat. He stood in the new Strategic Command Center on Kepler Station, watching reports from across the galaxy. The humans had been given their own department, officially called the Irregular Tactics Division. Unofficially, the alien officers called it the Chaos Department. The swarm hit our supply convoy at Rigel 7 using hit-and-run tactics. Amy reported, her fingers dancing over alien computer interfaces. "They're abandoning their traditional mass assault formations. They're learning to fight like us," Pete said grimly. He wore the uniform of an Alliance Special Operations instructor. Now, his expertise in unconventional warfare desperately needed. "Using our own tactics against us." Lisa entered the command center still wearing her flight suit, fresh from a training mission with new Alliance pilots. The enemy fighters at Vega 5 were using evasive patterns that looked almost human. Random turns, unpredictable attack runs. Dr. Veltar approached the group, her skin showing patterns of worry. "The swarm's adaptation rate has increased dramatically since your arrival. They are incorporating human tactical concepts into their strategic matrix. Jake studied the tactical displays showing enemy movement across dozens of star systems. The Void Swarm was no longer the predictable enemy it had been for 2 centuries. Now it fought with creativity and chaos, making it even more dangerous than before. "We knew this would happen," he said finally. "The question is whether we can stay ahead of them." "There's something else," Dr. Veltar said quietly. "Our intelligence teams have detected unusual signals from the wreckage of destroyed swarm ships. We believe the enemy is attempting to communicate with something." Amy looked up from her workstation. "Communicate with what?" "We are not certain. But the signals match patterns we detected from Earth's final transmissions before the planet's destruction." A cold feeling settled in Jake's stomach. "You think there are human consciousness patterns in the swarm network?" "It would explain their rapid adaptation to your tactics. If they have access to human military knowledge from your home world, they could learn to counter everything you teach us." The implications were staggering. If the Void Swarm had captured and preserved human minds from Earth's destruction, they would have access to centuries of human military experience. Every tactic the Alliance learned from Jake's team could be countered by knowledge taken from their own people. "We need to know for sure," Jake said. "If there are human minds trapped in the swarm network, we have to try to rescue them." General Zarak entered the command center, his scaled features showing the strain of the prolonged campaign. "Captain Morrison, we have a new situation. Long-range scouts report a massive swarm fleet massing near the Titan Nebula. Intelligence suggests they are preparing for a counterattack." "How massive?" Pete asked. "Over 1,000 ships. More than we have ever seen in one location. They appear to be using new formations that combine traditional swarm tactics with irregular patterns." "Human-inspired tactics," Amy said quietly. "They're going to hit us with everything they've learned from our own strategies." Jake looked around the command center at the alien officers working at their stations. These beings had welcomed humanity into their war, trusted human judgment, even when it violated everything they believed about proper warfare. Now that trust might be the thing that destroyed them. "What's the target?" he asked. "Unknown," General Zarak replied. "But the fleet is positioned to strike at either Kepler Station or the civilian refuge worlds in the Inner Rim. Our intelligence suggests they will attack within 72 hours. Lisa stepped forward. "We can't defend everything. Our fleet is spread across too many systems." "Then we don't defend," Jake said, the beginning of an idea forming in his mind. "We attack first." "With what force?" General Zarak demanded. "They outnumber us 2-1, and they are using tactics derived from your own military doctrine." "That's exactly why we can beat them," Jake replied. "They learned human tactics from captured data, from analysis and observation. But they don't understand the most important part of human warfare." "Which is?" Dr. Veltar asked. "We change the rules when we're losing. The swarm learned our old tactics, but humans never stop evolving. Amy, how long would it take to modify our entire fleet for close-range combat?" Amy's eyes widened as she understood his thinking. "You want to strip out the long-range weapons and pack everything with short-range systems? That's insane. It violates every principle of space warfare." "Exactly. The swarm will expect us to fight at maximum range using energy weapons and missiles. They've adapted their formations to counter that kind of battle. But what if we force them into knife-fighting range, where their perfect formations become weaknesses?" Pete nodded slowly. "Close quarters in space. Turn it into a brawl instead of a chess match." "The risk is enormous," General Zarak protested. "If we fail, we lose our entire fleet." "If we don't try, we lose anyway," Jake replied. "The swarm has learned to fight like humans, but they still think like machines. They'll stick to their plan even when it stops working. We won't. Over the next 48 hours, the Alliance fleet underwent the most radical modification in galactic military history. Long-range weapons were stripped out and replaced with point defense systems and short-range plasma cannons. Armor plating was reinforced for close combat. Fighter squadrons were retrained for dogfighting instead of precision strikes. This is either brilliant or the most catastrophic mistake in military history, Admiral Thess observed as she watched her beautiful ships being converted into armored brawlers. "Welcome to human tactical thinking," Amy replied, working frantically to complete the modifications. "We specialize in plans that are both." The Void Swarm fleet arrived at Titan Nebula exactly when intelligence predicted. Over 1,000 ships, in perfect formation, ready to execute a flawless assault using adapted human tactics. They found the Alliance fleet waiting for them in the nebula's gas clouds, hidden from sensors and ready for the fight of their lives. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake broadcast to the entire fleet. "Today we fight not as separate species, but as one people defending our homes. The enemy thinks they know how humans fight. Let's show them what they missed." The battle began with the Swarm fleet advancing in modified human formations, expecting the Alliance to engage at long range. Instead, the Alliance ships charged directly into the enemy formation, closing to point-blank range where their converted weapons had devastating effect. The result was chaos beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships grappled and fought like ancient sailing vessels, plasma cannons firing at ranges measured in meters instead of kilometers. The Swarm's perfect formations collapsed into individual duels between ships. In the heart of the battle, Jake watched as human tactical doctrine faced its own reflection. The enemy fought with learned human creativity, but the Alliance fought with human heart. And in the end, that made all the difference. "Swarm fleet is breaking off," reported the communications officer. "They're retreating toward the system edge." Victory was complete, but Jake knew it was also final. The Void Swarm would not make the same mistake again. They would adapt to close-range combat, just as they had adapted to everything else. But for now, the galaxy was safe. The Alliance had proven that organic life could triumph over machine logic, that chaos could defeat order, and that the human spirit could inspire courage in beings from across the stars. As Jake looked out at the mixed fleet of human-modified alien ships, he realized that something new had been born in this war. Not just a military alliance, but a true partnership between species. The humans had brought their tactical expertise, but they had also learned from alien knowledge and wisdom. The war against the Void Swarm would continue, but humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and neither were any of the other species, who now fought together as one people under the stars. Pete's voice came over the communication system from his command post. "Not bad for 4 soldiers who were supposed to be dead." "The best soldiers never really die," Jake replied. "They just find new wars to fight and new people to protect." The battle was over, but the legend of human determination had spread across the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast network of the Void Swarm, captured human minds began to stir with hope, knowing that rescue might finally be possible. The war was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the galaxy fought with hope instead of desperation. And that change would make all the difference in the battles to come.